Okay, so the recording has started, and I want to welcome everybody on behalf of the Columbus Karma Thegsum Choling Tibetan Buddhist Meditation Center. Welcome you to the 6th installment of 7 installments on the book, The 37 Actions or the 37 Practices of a Bodhisattva by Ngujal Tagme. We're working from a copy of the book that was commented on by Khenpo Tsoldram Jamso, and so we're going to be continuing to use that book. This evening, I want to start just by thanking everybody, and I'm going to after the opening prayer, I'm going to see if anybody has any initial thoughts they want to share regarding their experience with reciting the 37 practices, because I know many of you got those beautiful little books and have started reciting the 37 practices as a daily practice. And if anybody has anything to share, I'll ask about that as soon as we finish with the prayers. So I'm going to mute everyone now, and also let you know that I'm going to have everybody. Oops, wait a minute. I'm going to, here we go. Everyone will be muted for the next little bit, and then when it comes time to ask questions and so on, you can press your space bar if you're on a laptop, or hit the unmute feature on your screen to make your comment. So we'll start with that. Okay, we'll start with a short prayer. We'll say the prayer of taking refuge, and then after that, make the aspiration of the 4 immeasurables. In the Buddha, his teaching, and the order most excellent, I take refuge until enlightenment is reached. By the merit of generosity and other good deeds, may we attain Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings. May all beings be happy and have the causes of happiness. May they be free from suffering and the causes of suffering. May they have that great happiness, which is freedom from suffering. May they dwell in great equanimity, free from attachment and aversion to those near and far. And I'll recite a short prayer to the gurus of the lineage. O Palden Sawe Lama Rinpoche, Dagi Chiwur Pede Denshala Kadran Chembukwane Che Sunte, Kusum Toki Ngudrup Saldu So. Okay. And then I'm just because I know this is going to take a few minutes, this will probably take 7 minutes or more, I'm going to put the on screen sharing, I'm going to put the, if we can get this to work. There we go. I'm going to show you the 37 practices of a Bodhisattva, and we're going to recite the whole thing just now. And you can follow along with the screen. I hope the printing is big enough for you to see. Okay. This way, if you wanted to get one in today, now you've got one in. Okay. Namo Lokishvaraya. You see that all phenomena neither come nor go. Still you strive solely for the benefit of beings. Supreme Guru and Protector Chenrezi, to you I continually bow with body, speech, and mind. The perfect Buddhas, sources of benefit and happiness, arise from accomplishing the genuine Dharma. Since that in turn depends on knowing how to practice, the practices of a Bodhisattva shall be explained. Now that you have obtained the precious human body, the great boat so difficult to find, in order to free yourself and others from the ocean of samsara, to listen, reflect, and meditate with diligence day and night is the practice of a Bodhisattva. Passion towards friends churns like water. Hatred towards enemies burns like fire. Through dark ignorance, one forgets what to adopt and what to reject. to abandon one's homeland is the practice of a bodhisattva. Giving up negative places, mental afflictions gradually decrease. With no distractions, virtuous activities naturally increase. When mind becomes clear, certainty in the Dharma is born. To rely on solitude is the practice of a bodhisattva. Old friends and relatives will separate. Possessions gained with exertion will be left behind. Consciousness, the guest, will leave the guest house of the body. To let go of this life is the practice of a bodhisattva. When friendship with someone causes the three poisons to increase, degrades the activities of listening, reflecting, and meditating, and destroys loving kindness and compassion, to give up such a friendship is the practice of a bodhisattva. When in reliance on someone, your defects wane and your positive qualities grow like the waxing moon. To cherish such a spiritual friend more than your own body is the practice of a bodhisattva. Themselves captives in the prison of samsara, whom can the worldly gods protect? Therefore, to seek refuge in those who do not deceive, the three jewels, is the practice of a bodhisattva. The suffering of the lower realms, so difficult to bear, is the fruit of wrong deeds, so the Buddha taught. Therefore, even at the cost of your life, never to commit negative actions is the practice of a bodhisattva. Like dew on a blade of grass, happiness in the three realms evaporates in a single instant. To strive for the supreme state of liberation that never changes is the practice of a bodhisattva. From beginningless time, your mothers have cherished you. If they now suffer, what good is your own happiness? Therefore, in order to liberate limitless sentient beings, giving rise to bodhicitta is the practice of a bodhisattva. All suffering comes from yearning for your own happiness. The perfect Buddhas are born from the intention to benefit others. Therefore, to truly exchange your own happiness for the suffering of others is the practice of a bodhisattva. Even if someone driven by desire steals all your wealth or incites someone else to steal it, to dedicate to this person your body, possessions, and all your virtue of the three times is the practice of a bodhisattva. If someone cuts off your head, even when you have not done the slightest thing wrong, through the power of compassion, to take his misdeeds upon yourself is the practice of a bodhisattva. Should someone slander you throughout a billion worlds, with a heart full of love to proclaim his good qualities in return, is the practice of a bodhisattva. If in the middle of a crowd of people, someone reveals your hidden faults and abuses you for them, to see him as a spiritual friend and to bow with respect is the practice of a bodhisattva. If someone whom you cherish as dearly as your own child takes you for an enemy, then, like a mother whose child is sick, to love that person even more is the practice of a bodhisattva. Even when someone who is your equal or inferior, driven by spite, seeks to defame you, to place him on the crown of your head with the same respect you would accord your guru is the practice of a bodhisattva. Though gripped by poverty and always scorned, though stricken by disease and tormented by evil spirits, to take upon yourself the negativity and suffering of every being and never to get discouraged is the practice of a bodhisattva. Though famous and prominent, someone to whom others bow, though you amass riches of the God of wealth, to see that worldly splendor has no essence and thus to be without arrogance is the practice of a bodhisattva. If you have not tamed the enemy of your own anger, combating outer opponents will only make them multiply. Therefore, with an army of loving kindness and compassion, to tame your own mind is the practice of a bodhisattva. Since pleasures are like salt water, the more you partake of them, the more your craving will increase. Therefore, when something arouses attachment, to abandon it immediately is the practice of a bodhisattva. All appearances are your own mind, and mind itself primordially transcends all mental fabrications. Knowing this is the precise nature of reality to remain free from dualistic conceptions is the practice of a bodhisattva. When you encounter objects that please your mind, know they are like rainbows in the summer season. Though they seem beautiful, to see they are not real and to give up attachment to them is the practice of a bodhisattva. All suffering is like the death of your child in a dream. To take such delusive appearances as true, how exhausting! Therefore, whenever you encounter unpleasant circumstances, to see them as delusion is the practice of a bodhisattva. If those who aspire to enlightenment willingly give up their bodies, what need is there to mention external objects? Therefore, with no hope of reward or benefit, to give with generosity is the practice of a bodhisattva. If lack of discipline prevents you from benefiting yourself, then your wish to benefit others is just a joke. Therefore, to guard discipline with no longing for worldly existence is the practice of a bodhisattva. For a bodhisattva who seeks a wealth of virtue, every harm is like a precious treasure. Therefore, without getting irritated by anything at all, to cultivate patience is the practice of a bodhisattva. If Shravakas and Pratyeka Buddhas who strive for their benefit alone expend effort as if to extinguish a fire burning on their heads, then, for the benefit of all beings, to cultivate joyous effort, the wellspring of positive qualities, is the practice of a bodhisattva. Vipassana, perfectly endowed with shamatha, completely conquers all afflictions. To cultivate meditative stability that transcends the four formless states is the practice of a bodhisattva. Without superior knowledge, it is not possible to attain perfect enlightenment through the first 5 paramitas alone. Therefore, joining it with skillful means and not conceptualizing about the 3 spheres to cultivate superior knowledge is the practice of a bodhisattva. If you have not analyzed your own confusion, you might put on a dharmic facade while behaving in a non-dharmic way. Therefore, to continually analyze your delusion and then discard it is the practice of a bodhisattva. If compelled by your own afflictions, you speak of the faults of other bodhisattvas, you yourself will degenerate. Therefore, never to mention the faults of those who have entered the Mahayana path is the practice of a bodhisattva. Desire for gain and honor leads to arguments, and activities of listening, reflecting, and meditating decline. Therefore, to relinquish attachment to the households of friends, relatives, and sponsors is the practice of a bodhisattva. Harsh words disturb the minds of others and compromise a bodhisattva's right conduct. Therefore, to give up harsh and unpleasant speech is the practice of a bodhisattva. Once you've become accustomed to the mental afflictions, they are hard to cure with antidotes. Therefore, with the remedies of mindfulness and awareness, to eliminate mental afflictions the moment they arise is the practice of a bodhisattva. In brief, wherever you are and whatever you do, always examine the state of your mind. Cultivating mindfulness and awareness continuously to benefit others is the practice of a bodhisattva. To clear away the suffering of all infinite beings with superior knowledge, free of concepts of the 3 spheres, to dedicate the merit accumulated through these efforts to enlightenment is the practice of a bodhisattva. Relying on what is taught in the sutras, tantras, treatises, and the words of the genuine masters, I have composed these 37 bodhisattva practices to benefit those who wish to train on the bodhisattva's path. Because my intelligence is small and my studies few, I cannot compose poetry to please the scholars. Yet, since they are based on sutras and the teachings of the genuine masters, I believe these practices of a bodhisattva are not mistaken. Nevertheless, since the vast conduct of a bodhisattva is difficult to fathom, for one with an inferior intellect such as mine, I pray to the genuine masters to consider with patience all mistakes, such as contradictions, incoherence, and so on. By the virtue of the merit gathered here, by the power of relative and ultimate bodhicitta, May all sentient beings become like the protector Chenrezig, who dwells neither in the extreme of existence nor in that of peace. The monk Togme, a proponent of scriptures and logic, has composed these verses in a cave known as Mucho Rinchen Pup to benefit himself and others. Okay. So thank you for walking through that with me. It's nice. It's nice to know. We used to do this at the Columbus KTC on Sundays. We would sit and do 2 or 3 recitations of it as a group, and it was a lot of fun. So thanks for joining me for that. And now, if anybody has anything they would like to share in terms of their experience over the last couple of months working with the 37 practices, you can, okay, I see Bill. Bill, you have a share. Now can you, yeah, you can unmute yourself, right?
Yeah, I can. Hi, thank you, Anna Kathy.
Yeah.
So I've been doing the recitation. So thank you for giving me that. One thing I've done is recently I've kind of reinvigorated some of my mantra practice a little bit. And one of the things that I find is that if I recite the 37 practices before doing like the mantra visualization and recitation, it feels like a refuge and bodhisattva prayer, 4 measurables, and then the 37 practices. It feels like it really kind of gets locked in, because when I go into the mantra practice from that, it's like I've primed the pump kind of, so like there's no mistaking what it is I'm after, so I've found that to kind of be quite sort of recharging for some of the practices I've already been doing and kind of rekindled. So I don't know if that, but anyway, that's been a real benefit for me.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing that, Bill, because what I think I personally find that the practices help each other. They help each other and they build on each other. I think of alternating rungs on a ladder. That bodhicitta is such a powerful force. It's such a powerful force that it can help lift up whatever else we're doing. Because actually, refuge is at the beginning of all Tibetan Buddhist practice. We always have refuge at the beginning. And then following that, we have the bodhisattva motivation. And then that gives some energy and life to the intention behind the practice and makes it more effective. At least that's kind of the sense I get of it because Khenpo Karthar Rinpoche, he said you really need to precede your practice by refuge, so that everything that follows the taking of refuge then is part of your path toward Buddhahood. And then secondarily, if you can recite some type of bodhisattva aspiration also after refuge or with refuge, because there's that short 4-line refuge prayer, the one that I cited at the beginning, that actually has the bodhisattva motivation rolled into it. So it's both refuge and bodhicitta. And so if you can do that, then it gives, he said it gives extra power to what you're doing, because then has the bodhisattva, we'll call it sheen on it. Yeah. So thanks for sharing.
Yeah, and then reciting the 37 after that, like really charges it so yeah, thank you.
Yeah, in the for those of you who were part of our earlier book study on the Great Path of Awakening, in the beginning of the book, Jamgon Khantrul the Great makes a bold statement, and that bold statement is that there is no Buddhahood without the development of bodhicitta. He just says you can't do it. It's impossible to attain Buddhahood without bodhicitta. And if you think about it, it's true, because if we're only looking for our own benefit, then our practice is very limited. We can only go so far. But if we give up the idea of our own benefit and instead look to the benefit of others and dedicate ourselves to the benefit of others, that releases the potential for that working for ourselves alone to hold us back. So thanks. I have time for a couple more shares. Thank you for that, Bill. Anybody else want to share something from the last month or so?
Tom here.
Yeah. Hey, Tom.
Hi. Similar to Bill. So I typically read at the end of the day, towards the evening, and also I still continue on with some Vajrasattva practice. So it's almost like set intentions for the day, in the morning, but then at night I will read this, and then, all right, where did I slip? And it's, it is one of those things like where it's like a complete practice, and it's like, oh, I read this one. Oh, yep. Somebody revealed my hidden faults, and I slammed them in my mind, or I cursed, whatever. But it's also like, all right, my checklist of all the bad things that I did, and then it's like, refreshing that, or I guess doing the Vajrasattva practice to purify and renew for the evening or the next day, right? So.
Yeah, I appreciate you sharing that. I was talking to another Dharma friend today, and we were talking about, we were kind of joking a little bit about the spiritual hygiene aspect, like you brush your teeth every day. That's your teeth hygiene, and stuff like that. But there's also like a spiritual hygiene of like doing the maintenance on your Bodhisattva vow, because technically once a person takes the Bodhisattva vow, they should remember it at the very least morning and evening. And if they can, also at some time midday. And then if they're really into it, they'll wake up in the middle of the night and do it. But most people won't do that. But the idea is that every few hours you look back and reflect on what's happened to you in the past 12 hours, if it's just twice a day, and so on. And the good thing about this is that it provides a mirror we hold up a mirror to ourselves, and we are actually willing to look at who we have been in the last 12 hours, what we have done that is beneficial, and what we've done that's not beneficial. And being able to own both of those things, own and rejoice in the good things that we have done, and own and feel regret for the negative things that we have done. Khenpo Karthar Rinpoche said that this process is how we change and how we improve, because without this self-reflection, we could just be building a narrative about ourselves, like, oh, I'm a great person, I don't do anything wrong. And we could build that narrative, but it would be based on nothing, because we're not willing to confront both the negative things that we do and the positive things that we do. We're not willing to confront that, own that, and then say, I'm going to do better. Because if we look at Buddhist confession, you rely on the Buddha as your witness for your confession. You regret and recall the negative things you've done. You take the remedy of doing the process of confession, and then you resolve not to repeat it. And so these are called the 4 powers of confession: reliance, regret, remedy, and resolution. And by doing this, Khenpo Rinpoche said that, Khenpo Karthar Rinpoche, when he was teaching about this, he said, this is how we purify our negative karma and bring about better behavior for ourselves. And so I think that the 37 practices, I think they do offer a framework. They offer a framework for us to look at our behavior, because even though we're not the bodhisattvas who could like stand to have somebody defame us across a billion worlds or something, maybe we're not ready to do that, but maybe we are ready to not get back at somebody who just says something nasty to our face. I mean, we're all in a different place with this, right? But anyhow, so even if we can't act as a bodhisattva at that high level, at least at the very least, we can make progress. Does that make sense? Good. Yeah. Thanks for sharing that, Tom. And I see Sherry has something to share. Do you want me just to read this, Sherry? It says, love the practice of recitation. My husband, who is not a student of Buddhism, sits each morning as I recite these practices. It reminds me that whoever hears the Dharma, even if it is not understood, the person is benefited. Absolutely. I can definitely agree with that, because at the very least, they have an exposure to it. They're exposed to the ideas of the Dharma. And even if they don't fully understand it, it is something that they can then begin to slowly, they can slowly take in. So thank you. I have time for one more, if there's one more out there, if anybody has a share or a comment.
Lama Kathy?
Yes, ma'am.
Hi. Well,
Christine.
yeah, hi. I just wanted to say quickly that I really got a lot out of what these two gentlemen shared, Bill and I think Tom. I love these practices. I love slogans, and they really are, they are a guide for how to live on a daily basis. And they're very strong and serious reminders. You know, I like number 5 especially because it talks about, you know, friendships and having friends or relationships with people that if they cause the 3 poisons to increase, well, ultimately ditch them, you know, in a nice way with compassion. But basically, it reminds me that I don't, at this time, I don't need to be associated with people who encourage negative
Right.
actions, because that's not how I choose to be. And that's not how a bodhisattva would respond. And without being mean to someone, just like gently say, you know, this isn't the right friend for me.
Yeah.
So anyway, I think they're great. They're all great. All 37 of them. They're fabulously wonderful.
Yeah. Well, and I appreciate that. And I see Tracy has just put in the chat, I second that. So yeah, I can hear that, because I think that that these practices provide a framework, and by reciting them every day slowly, they are we learn them by heart, right? I mean, because remember when we were kids, sometimes we would recite poetry by heart, or we would learn songs or poems and things by heart. And so it's like these practices are written on our heart, you know, when we think about them and reflect on them over and over again. And they teach us the how of restraint, of personal restraint, the how of restraint, the how of patience, the how of generosity, and so forth and so on. And because I think that this is where Buddhism has some advantage over other spiritual traditions, in that we have a lot of how. We have a lot of books about how, you know, how do you do this, and how do you reflect, and how do you meditate? And so, yeah, so thanks. Well, and I see Caitlin has a comment when one of the practices would be beneficial in everyday life. The words sometimes come to me from the practice, even though I didn't know I had it memorized. Oh yeah. See, I think that this is what's behind Khenpo Sotram Jamso's encouragement to people to recite it dozens and dozens and dozens of times, is because it becomes part of us, and becoming part of us, we have it to call upon when times are tough, because then the how is right there in front of us. We may not be able to do the how, we may not be able to take on the negativity of others, but at least it comes back. And good for you. This is the sort of self-revelatory nature of Dharma practice. You know, you don't even know it's making an impact on you until you need it, and then suddenly it's there. I had somebody tell me that their shamatha practice became real for them when they were confronted by someone who was confronted by a negative, angry person, and they found themselves just going immediately to their breath and placing their attention on the breath and just being with the breath, so that they didn't have to say something to the person. So, you know, these practices do come in handy. Well, this is great. So, so this evening, with the Bodhisattva motivation in mind, let's look at where at what we're going to be talking about today. I'm putting on the screen here. I'm putting on the screen the book, the ebook, and I think we're on number 23. That's what Bill told us. And so let's see. I'm wondering, this may or may not be practical, but just for the heck of it, Caitlin, oh, that's right. Caitlin, you don't have audio, do you? Do you have audio?
I think I do.
Okay, would you do me a favor and just, would you be the person who reads this verse for us, please?
Sure.
Yeah, just the verse.
When you encounter objects that please your mind, know they are like rainbows in the summer season. Though they seem beautiful, to see they are not real and to give up attachment to them is the practice of a bodhisattva.
Okay, so so that gives so there's the seeing pleasant objects as rainbows. When we look back at number 22, which is about transcending dualistic appearances, it's recognizing that appearances are your mind and knowing that your mind is primordially pure and transcends all fabrications. And then remaining free from dualistic conceptions is the practice of a bodhisattva. So we may not be able to practice what is this ultimate view at the level we're at right now. We may not be able to incorporate this ultimate view in how we see things. So the next best thing is to see pleasant objects as being unreal. And so Kempo Sultram in his commentary says that this verse uses the rainbow as an example of form to illustrate that no matter how beautiful an appearance may seem, attachment to it must be relinquished. Beyond what the eye can see, objects that please your mind include the 4 other objects of the senses, because there are 5. There's forms that you see, pleasant sounds for the ear, appealing smells for the nose, delicious taste for the tongue, and soft, gentle objects for the skin. He said, clinging to these as real must be abandoned as well. And the reason for this is that by clinging to sense perceptions, we stay rooted in this body that we have. We stay rooted in the concept of me or I. I want this sense enjoyment. I want this for myself. And so it binds us to that experience and creates craving for more. And as we know from craving has like no end. And so what we have to try to do is abandon craving as we can. And one of the ways to abandon the craving is to see them as beautiful, like rainbows in the summer season. And so he says here, he says they are mere appearances that lack essence. And if we believe otherwise, our desire to cling to a desirable object will increase and our suffering will grow in equal measure for the things we can't get, or the things that we have that we then lose, or just that things change. Then he says, once the object is understood to be empty of essence, it can be enjoyed without attachment, without suffering. After all, what is there to give up? And in this way, he says, all forms, tastes, smells, and tactile objects have no self-nature. They are absolutely empty of essence. Though from the absolute perspective or ultimate perspective, they don't truly exist. In other words, they don't exist the way we think they exist. We think they exist as solid, real, permanent, and unchanging. He's saying they still appear. This apparent contradiction is called appearance and emptiness inseparable. Why do not we see this universal quality of the inseparability? It's because our minds are obscured by the idea that phenomena really exist, and this thought covers up their true nature. Our minds are veiled by the concepts. And so then he says that all appearances are like a dream. When we dream, objects appear clearly to us, but when we analyze them, we see they don't exist apart from being in our mind. Nevertheless, they manifest as appearance and emptiness inseparable. While we sleep, we accept the reality of our dreams because we fail to recognize that we are dreaming. Upon awakening, we understand our dreams were only mental events, mere dream appearances. Our idea or concept of them was mistaken. And when we wake up, we cut through that mistake. He says our tasks are to dismantle the idea that appearances truly exist and become free from conceptual obscurations that veil how things really are. In this way, the empty nature of appearance will manifest and our life will become relaxed, open, and spacious. And this is something that Mingyur Rinpoche talks about at length in his books, that when we begin to see the illusory nature of phenomena, it's very easy to then make offerings of this illusory phenomena. If it's a pleasant object, you think, well, I offer this to the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas for the benefit of sentient beings. And this way it's easy to offer them. And if it's something unpleasant, we can say we take on the negativity of others, and may all beings and myself be free of these negative things. And so this way we can use our experience of things as a way of practicing the Bodhisattva motivation. That takes us to the next verse, which talks about seeing unpleasant circumstances as delusions. I don't know if I can, yeah, I think I can hold this in between. Let's see. Tom, have you done a reading yet? Could you read?
I had, but I can.
Okay. Let's pick somebody who hasn't read. Let's see. I'm sorry. Let's see who hasn't read. Christine, can you read?
Practice number 24, seeing unpleasant circumstances as delusions. All suffering is like the death of your child in a dream. To take such delusive appearances as true, how exhausting. Therefore, whenever you encounter unpleasant circumstances, to see them as delusions is the practice of a bodhisattva.
Okay. Wow. A lot of people, they find a lot of challenge in this verse, because it is the most difficult thing for any human being to imagine, the death of a child. And therefore it's very hard to comment on this verse because of the pain of the loss of a child that has been shared by so many people. And so it's a little bit tough to talk about it. But what he's getting at here is he chooses the one thing that is the most painful human experience, is the loss of a child. He takes this incredibly painful experience and says all suffering is like the death of your child in a dream. It's not the actual death, but having that experience in the dream and then awakening to find that it's not true. It's exhausting. It's exhausting to continuously see the world as things that we can have and own and take and get. And there's this endless cycle of wanting and getting and taking and losing. And this is what he's saying is causing exhaustion. And so therefore, he says, whenever you encounter unpleasant circumstances, to see them as delusions or as like a bad dream. A bad dream is the practice of a bodhisattva. And so he says, we have so many kinds of suffering. Our body, possessions, enemies, friends can cause sorrow, but not one of these sources of pain truly exists in the way we think they exist. All are delusive appearance, nothing but dreams. In other words, we have these experiences in our mind, and that if we really look at it, all we are experiencing is something that's happening in our mind, ever, always. And so what he's trying to encourage us to do is to take that one step back from our experience and to consider that our experience is happening in our mind. And so he talks about he says, the truth of the matter is there's no reason to mourn because no one has died. Well, it's very hard for us to think about and to get to that type of place. But he says all suffering is delusive. All appearances are delusive and confused. Life will exhaust you if you do not recognize this. So he says, don't take delusive appearances to be true. However, it is not enough to glibly think, oh, it's only an illusion. Conviction is needed that this is actually the case. To develop conviction, first correctly analyze why the situation and its appearances are delusive. And this means applying your own experience to the Buddhist teaching that appearances do not truly exist. Do this again and again. Eventually, you will develop a firm conviction that waking experience is no different from the dream. Then when difficult circumstances arise, you will know they are delusions and will be able to apply the practice of a bodhisattva. And so there's one thing that studying the Great Path of Awakening did for us. It talked about how we can, through meditating on the 4-stage meditation on the nature of mind, how we can see gradually and become convinced gradually that all things that happen to us are mental experiences. And seeing that all things are mental experiences, that we can begin to let go of them and to begin to be able to either offer them if they're pleasant or take on the negative experience of others for those things that are unpleasant. So again, we're not at the place where we could imagine this kind of offering, this kind of experience, but at least it's something we can begin with. I will pause to take questions after the next one. Practices 25 through 30 address the 6 perfections or the 6 paramitas, and I'm going to try to work through this and get as many of these done as possible. The first perfection is generosity, and I'm trying to think who hasn't read. Hey, since we know that you have audio, Chuck, can you read? Do you have, is the print too small for you? Can you read it?
I can read off my own copy.
Okay, yeah, but that's a good idea. Do that.
Okay. If those who aspire to enlightenment must willingly give away their own bodies, what need to mention external objects? Therefore, with no hope for personal reward or benefit, to be generous is the practice of a bodhisattva.
Thank you. So, here he gives us the teachings on the 6 paramitas or the 6 perfect virtues. These are the 6 virtues that help us overcome ego fixation and find liberation, the liberation of Buddhahood. And so so here he's talking about the practitioners will actually, in order to attain enlightenment, they'll live very simple lives where they don't really worry too much about how much eating and sleeping they do, and so on and so forth. And then, and so if that kind of person can do that kind of practice, then, you know, what need is there to mention external objects? So if they're willing to give away even their own bodies in the practice of enlightenment, then as it says, what need is there to mention external objects? And so then to give with generosity is the practice of a bodhisattva. So he says, someone who wishes to attain enlightenment must be ready, like the Buddha himself, to make the ultimate offer of his body. In several of his lives as a bodhisattva, the teacher gave his own body, such as the story about the hungry tigress who could not feed her cubs. And so the Buddha laid down, he was a bodhisattva in a previous lifetime. He laid down and gave his body to the tigress so that she could nourish her cubs. So he says, in order to attain enlightenment, you need to be ready to surrender your own body. If you are, then offering merely your possessions is hardly worth mentioning. Therefore, with no hope of reward or karmic benefit, you must give generously to practice like a bodhisattva. Khenpo Karthar Rinpoche said, we can't give at this level of our giving our own body. We're not ready to do that just yet. We're just bodhisattvas in training. We're not perfect bodhisattvas. We can't give away our body. He said, but at least we can begin to consider giving generously of our possessions, since giving those things away helps to remove obstacles and obscurations from us. But he says we have to give carefully. You know, we have to give very carefully, because he, and I mentioned this in a previous class, he mentioned one of his monastic friends when he was a monk in Tibet, who wanted to become a bodhisattva like right away. So he gave away his bowl, his spoon, and his shoes. And he thought that he was being super generous. But then when it came to be time for lunch, he had to go ask the person to give him his bowl back because he had nothing to eat with, and the spoon too. And then he had to walk somewhere and he realized he had no shoes. So he had to go back and ask for his shoes back. So we have to give at the level that we're ready to give at. And so we have to we have to be careful and give with wisdom, not just with compassion. Let's see. I can't see who all is here. Let me see if I can remember. So Tracy, did I have you read yet?
No, ma'am, I can read.
Yes. Okay. Very good.
Let me pull up my copy. Sorry.
Yeah. This would be practice 26.
26. If lack of discipline prevents you from benefiting yourself, then your wish to benefit others is just a joke. Therefore, to guard discipline with no longing for worldly exist is the practice of the Bodhisattva.
Okay, thank you. So the second of the practices of a bodhisattva is ethics, ethics and morality, and he talks here about the ethics of abandoning faults of body, speech, and mind. Second is the discipline to accumulate virtue, meaning that sometimes you have to work hard in order to accumulate virtue. And it says third is the discipline to work for the benefit of sentient beings. And then he talked about, as applied to the three vehicles, the Shravakayana or the Hinayana is giving up harming others. Benefiting others is the practice of the Mahayana, and developing the ability to see all appearances as pure is the discipline of the Vajrayana. In Vajrayana, we recite mantra and relate to our Buddha nature as though we ourselves were a Buddha or Bodhisattva, and so on. And he says, if without discipline, you can't accomplish even your own the benefit of the one-sided piece of nirvana, how will you be able to accomplish Buddhahood for the benefit of beings? And then he says, discipline with no longing for worldly existence means you forego all efforts to secure a favorable rebirth in the future, because you're still attached to samsara. The Bodhisattva practices discipline without any attachment to worldly existence. So here's the thing. Khenpo Karthar Rinpoche said once that if a person is ethical and doesn't hurt other people, that person becomes trustworthy. And they see the person as being trustworthy and stable. But if you never know how someone is going to act around you, if they might hurt you without a second thought, then you might fear being in their presence. And so that person would, other people would see you, if you're that person, they would see you as being unstable and unsafe to be around and untrustworthy. So Rinpoche says that guarding discipline or behaving ethically is a way to gain the trust of others and to benefit them. So that's why ethics is so important. I told a fib. We need to go through a couple more before we start the discussion of the discussion. So let me see here. Let's see who else is with us tonight. Let's see. I see Justin is here. Justin, can you unmute and read number 27 for us?
Sure. Practice 27, the third perfection, practicing patience. For a bodhisattva who seeks a wealth of virtue, every harm is like a precious treasure. Therefore, without getting irritated by anything at all, to cultivate patience is the practice of a bodhisattva.
Yeah, thank you. I will always remember Lama Lodro Lamo talking about what patience is. She came and did a program on the 6 perfections at Columbus KTC some time back. And one of the things that she said was that patience is not putting up with something. Patience is being open to how other people are, which I just thought was such a wonderful definition, because it doesn't mean that they do translate it in some cases as forbearance or bearing up again with something. But what she's saying is that there's this openness to how other people are, meaning that we know that people have weaknesses. We know that people have faults. We know that people are impatient. We know that people are angry. And we all know that people have moments where they are self-serving. And in this way, we know how people are. And if we can be open to that, it doesn't mean we have to say, yes, it's good, but it just means that we don't immediately act in a punitive and negative way about thinking in a punitive and negative way and acting in a punitive and negative way. Yes, we still have to punish criminals. We still have to take criminals out of society and try to help understand them. But do we have to hate them? And that's really what it comes down to. You know, we don't have to hate them. And because the hate actually harms us. And that the hatred that we feel for those people is actually corrosive to us. So patience of this type is encouraged. So he says here, what is patience? The genuine definition of patience is, let's see here, the genuine definitions of patience is the mental ability to remain unperturbed by negative conditions. Applied to Dharma, it means forbearance in the face of difficulty. Practitioners should be able to withstand whatever obstacles arise when they practice Dharma. This is true because sometimes when you're practicing, stuff happens and you can't do things the way you wish. And rather than getting angry about it, you can at least dedicate it to the removal of obstacles for other beings. So then he says that, for example, the extremes of heat and cold should not influence your commitment to practice. The paramita of patience goes further. It includes the patience to forbear emptiness. The profound nature of phenomena is emptiness. Hearing about this emptiness, some people become fearful. They think, if everything is empty, then what can I do? I am so afraid. Thus, patience also extends to one's ability to tolerate the idea of emptiness, the true nature of being. And then the Mahayana Sutra Lankara describes patience as having 4 qualities. 1, it pacifies anger. Anger and patience are opposites. If you are angry, then you're not being patient. And if you're not being patient, you're not behaving like a bodhisattva. The second quality of patience is that it's endowed with non-conceptual primordial wisdom. Bodhisattvas who completely understand this point understand the selflessness of phenomena and of the individual. The third quality is that one comes to like, and see, this is what my friend said. You be open to how other people are. You come to feel liking for all sentient beings. This is not a matter of saying, oh, I like everybody. A bodhisattva who has complete patience with everything hurtful or harmful bears affection toward everyone because they see what they're going through and then can bring happiness everywhere. This ability to bestow happiness on all beings is the sign of the paramita of patience been perfected. The fourth quality is that through perfecting patience, one can help others progressively develop their Dharma practice. This is called ripening others through the 3 vehicles, starting with the Shravakayana or the Hinayana, proceeding through the Mahayana and Vajrayana. A bodhisattva guides beings along the path, helping to decrease their afflictions and suffering and increase their compassion and wisdom. And then he says Milarepa had a very good reason to be angry with his aunt who had stolen everything from him. But as a Dharma practitioner, he practiced patience. After many years, he returned home where he discovered the bones of his mother and learned that his sister had disappeared. The family house, though damaged, still stood and had value. And one of his fields, although overgrown, was fertile and also had value. Patience enabled Milarepa to give his aunt the house and field, thereby pleasing her, which is the third quality of patience. By giving away all that he possessed to his worst enemy, Milarepa made her so happy that she became interested in Dharma. And thus the fourth quality of patience arose. Milarepa did not say, I'm justified in being angry to you, so I will not teach you Dharma. You're a bad woman, my enemy. Instead, he gave his aunt Dharma instructions. Her meditation practice took root and developed, and in the end, she became a great yogini. So the fourth quality of patience is able to ripen others on the path. And so then it tells other stories from the life of Milarepa. And because of time, I will leave you to read that later on. And at the bottom of this page, he says, in the Sutra Lankara, Maitreya describes the four qualities of patience. Patience decreases all opposite sides. One possesses non-conceptual primordial wisdom. One can perfectly fulfill all wishes, and one ripens sentient beings along the three vehicles. And then he says, as a Mahayana practitioner, always remember that anyone who hurts you has shown you a great kindness, and that whatever brings you harm bestows a precious treasure, because it causes your clinging to self to be reduced. It's like a poor person digging in the earth who finds oil, gold, silver, or becomes rich. From the Mahayana perspective, whatever or whoever or whatever harms us provides us the same opportunity for wealth. Why? To obtain a wealth of virtue requires a harmful opponent. Without a foe, how can we practice patience? The Dalai Lama said, without the communists, how could he practice patience? And so the Bodhisattva wishes to develop virtue, merit, and so forth. The prerequisite is our most precious treasure, an enemy. So before we go on to studying joyous effort, let's take a moment and see if there are any questions that have arisen, or if anybody has comments. I'm taking a quick look through chat, which I can't read when I'm doing screen sharing. This person is asking about organ donation or giving body to a medical school. Number 26 also reminds me of whichever the two occurs, be patient. Yeah, which is in point 7 of the 7-point mind training. That's right. It's I was thinking of something very similar to that when I was going through this. A person is asked about donating one's body to a medical school and so forth. Kempo Karthar Rinpoche has been asked about this. And he said that that for a person to make such a donation, he said they have to be really committed to it and have a very strong personal belief that what they are doing is necessary and important. Because he said, if not, then when the organs are being removed from your body after death, your mind may see it happening and then feel angry that this has happened. So the commitment to doing this has to be incredibly rooted deeply in you, so that when the time comes that you feel no regret and you feel no concern about it. And so that's pretty difficult. He said, but it is technically possible to have this level of commitment. And then another thing he said was, if a person is thinking that as they pass away from this life, that they might be able to meditate on Mahamudra as they pass away, he said they may not want to become an organ donor because then the process of organ donation would disturb their mind while they're trying to meditate. So he said, you have to make your decision based on the kind of practice you're doing and the kind of practice you want to do at the time of death. But it is, he did say that it is a very great act of generosity to give away organs and things like this, you know, but he said you have to be really committed. So are there any other questions that people might have about these or comments? Not seeing any. Okay. Okay. Then we'll go back to the book, because I want to see if we can work through just a few more of these for today. Christopher, can you do you have audio, and can you read the this next one on joyous effort?
Yes, sure. So cultivating joyous effort. If Shravakas and Pratyeka Buddhas who strive for their benefit alone expend effort as if to extinguish a fire burning on their heads, then for the benefit of all beings, to cultivate joyous effort, the wellspring of positive qualities, is the practice of a bodhisattva.
Okay, thanks very much. So so this what an image. All I can say is that Ngüchel Togme had a way with words. Let's just put it this way. He could bring up these amazing images in your mind that you will remember. And we can all imagine how that would be to extinguish a fire burning on our heads, and how much effort we would put into it. Here he's talking about joyous effort, which is the effort that comes from practicing Dharma, and the kind of dedication and discipline that we need, and diligence that we need to overcome the obstacles of the three kinds of laziness. There, in the Jewel Ornament of Liberation, Gampopa talks about three kinds of laziness, and that joyous effort overcomes them. One is the laziness of indolence, which is where you just kind of like take it easy and rest. The second is the laziness of busyness, where you stay so busy all the time that you have no time to do your practice. That's kind of my favorite kind of laziness. And then there's the third kind of laziness, which is the laziness of self-doubt and self-denigration, where you think, oh, I could never be a bodhisattva. I'll never become an enlightened being. I'm just not worthy. And so then we don't apply ourselves to Dharma practice because we think it won't work. So, and so in this way, when he's saying, if Shravakas and Pratyeka Buddhas who strive for their own benefit alone, so he's talking about the Shravaka yana or the Hinayana, where people are working very hard to understand and experience selflessness. And he says that they meditate very deeply and for a long time, and with this kind of benefit, so that they themselves can achieve non-suffering or nirvana. He said, can't we, who are trying to achieve the ultimate benefit of others, of ourselves and others, he says, we who have developed the enlightened attitude of the Mahayana should apply even greater effort. We should apply joyous effort, which is the source of positive qualities that benefit sentient beings. That is the practice of a bodhisattva. Joyous effort possesses the four qualities, the same four qualities as patience. To apply this paramita to Maitreya's verse that he just spoke about, we need to change only one phrase. Joyous effort decreases all opposite sides. One possesses non-conceptual primordial wisdom. One can perfectly fulfill all wishes, and one ripens sentient beings along the three vehicles. Joyous effort overcomes its opposite, laziness, by allowing us to engage enthusiastically in the Dharma. By applying non-conceptual primordial wisdom, as we carry out this practice, we transcend concepts of a diligent subject, diligent object, and the act of diligence. As a model of joyous effort, Milarepa pleased many beings. Seeing his diligence, they developed trust in him and in the Dharma, which fulfilled the third quality of joyous effort. Having won their trust, he gave them Dharma practices and helped bring them to maturity. Even today, Milarepa's example inspires us. We read his biography, admire his diligence, and his example ripens us along the path. This is an example of the fourth quality of joyous effort. I want to say one more thing about joyous effort, and that is that when we do the opposite of these virtues, like when we are miserly and don't give, we feel all tight and hurt inside. And when we are unstable and harming other beings and not practicing ethics, we're very miserable. And when we're impatient, we kind of burn up with our own anger. But the opposite of these things actually feels kind of good. It feels sort of good to be generous. It feels sort of good to be stable. It feels sort of good to practice Dharma. And so in this way, when we practice these things, patience and generosity and ethics, and now joyous effort, we begin to feel better. We actually begin to feel better. And so it's easier to do virtuous things after we practice it for a while. And so it's my hope that everybody can at least practice a little bit of the joyous effort in their practice. Let's see about then we'll read about the fifth perfection, which is meditative stability. And let's see. Let's see. Hey, Judy, can you unmute yourself and read this one for me?
Sure, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can.
Okay, practice 29, the fifth perfection, attaining meditative stability. Vipassana, perfectly endowed with shamatha, completely conquers all afflictions. To cultivate meditative stability that transcends the four formless states is the practice of a bodhisattva.
Okay, thank you, Judy. I appreciate that. So, there's a little bit of vocabulary here that we have to learn. In this section, Vipassana, first of all, is a word that you may or may not have heard, and it means insight. There are two types of meditation. There's shamatha, which is calm abiding, and vipassana, which is seeing the nature of all reality. And so what he's saying here is that if we can practice the true understanding and knowing the true nature of reality, and endow that practice of seeing the true nature of reality with shamatha, which means undistractedness. Khenpo Karthar Rinpoche, somebody asked him, how will I know when my shamatha is really good? He said, when you can put your attention on an object of meditation and leave it there for as long as you want. He said, then you will have really done good shamatha. If you can put your attention on something and just leave it there, and you can have it there for as long as you want. Well, I'm not there yet, even after all these years, because I still am prone to distraction. But I can see why these first two lines say what they say. Because if I knew the true nature of all reality, right, that everything is illusory and yet it appears, and it's the unity of appearance and emptiness. If I knew that and could be in that state undistractedly, I can see how that would conquer all mental afflictions. I could see how that would be possible. And so since we know this to be true, he says, therefore, to cultivate meditative stability that transcend the four formless states is the practice of a bodhisattva. And then he says, and then Khenpo Tsultrim comments, among the three realms of samsara, the desire realm, the form and formless realms. The highest of these realms is the formless, which is reached through samadhi or meditative stability. Samadhi has 4 levels. They have names: infinite space, infinite consciousness, complete nothingness, and peak of existence. So they have names. These are the 4 formless states. The highest among most subtle of these is the peak of existence. Within all existence, all samsara, no state, mental state or mind state is higher. But no matter how subtle this state of mind may be, it still lies within the 3 realms of samsara. In other words, you're still stuck in cyclic existence. You may be in the very highest experience of cyclic existence, but you're still in samsara and then can fall. So to conquer mental afflictions, our meditation must go beyond even that. So the transcendence of samsara requires superior knowledge, the wisdom that realizes the selflessness of all phenomena. And how does this manifest? When vipassana or analytic or insight meditation arises from your shamatha, the peaceful abiding meditation, the two become as one. This union, known as samten or stable meditation, activates superior knowledge within our samadhi. So within our our meditative absorption, but then this wisdom arises. This 5th paramita, samten, is the key to unlocking the wisdom that realizes emptiness. Through meditative stability or samten, one completely conquers all afflictions and sufferings, goes beyond these 4 states of samsaric samadhi, and transcends all existence. One is liberated from samsara completely. Therefore, stable meditation is the practice of a bodhisattva. And then again, he uses Maitreya's verse to say that it has those 4 qualities. Stable meditation decreases its opposite, which is confusion. It is embraced by non-conceptual primordial wisdom. One can perfectly fulfill all beings' wishes, and one ripens sentient beings along the 3 vehicles. So how does meditative stability decrease its opposite? Agitation and dullness. The opposites of samten are faults that in equal measure hinder meditation. The greater the meditative stability, the less these faults will operate. So you may have them, but they may not be able to do much. With regard to meditation, the quality of non-conceptual primordial wisdom refers to not taking the meditator, the object of meditation, and the act of meditating to be truly real and existent. They are not conceptualized. From meditative stability arises the 3rd quality, that of fulfilling all wishes. The meditator now develops special qualities and all-seeing knowledge through which she or he can accomplish miracles that please others and make them happy. These miracles inspire others to trust in the Dharma and arouse their interest in practice and give the Bodhisattva the opportunity to ripen them on all the 3 vehicles, the Hinayana, the Mahayana, and the Vajrayana. And ripening is the 4th quality. And then he tells another story about Milarepa's perfection of the meditative stability. He talks about his song about the 3 scholars that Milarepa debated with. Milarepa, pleased with knowledge and miracles, even the scholars who wanted to defeat him in debate, then he ripened them with the genuine Mahamudra and the 6 yogas of Naropa. Thus they became principal disciples. How wonderful. And so that brings us to the 6th and final paramita. And I am wondering if Patricia can unmute and read this one for me, please. There she is.
Without superior knowledge, it is not possible to attain perfect enlightenment through the first 5 paramitas alone. Therefore, joining it with skillful means and not conceptualizing about the 3 spheres is the practice of a bodhisattva.
Okay, thanks very much. So now we come to the last of the 6 perfections. We've talked about generosity. We've talked about ethics. We've talked about patience. We've talked about joyous effort or diligence. We've talked about meditative stability or samten. And now we're going to talk about wisdom. And what he's saying here may at first seem contradictory, saying that without superior knowledge, it is not possible to attain perfect enlightenment through the first 5 paramitas alone. So what he's getting at here is this is the fact that if you are generous and you're still conceiving subject, object, and action, this subject, object, and action is still causing confusion for you. And it's the same with practicing ethics with subject, object, and action, and patience, and meditative absorption and diligence. So the idea here is that once we realize wisdom within ourselves, then and only then will our practice of these perfections be truly perfect. Until then, it will be still samsaric, at least a little bit, and still have and fall short of perfection. So here he's talking about what wisdom really is and differentiating between knowledge and wisdom. He says, generally, when one thinks of knowledge, what comes to mind is worldly knowledge, the sort of that enables us to manufacture cars, make computers, or cure sickness. Here, the text speaks of a different kind of knowledge, superior knowledge that transcends the world of samsara. Superior knowledge recognizes the selflessness of the individual and phenomena and is united with the skillful meanings of loving kindness and compassion. For knowledge to be superior, it must transcend the conceptualization of the 3 spheres, the subject, the person doing the action, the object, and the action itself. These are the 3 spheres: subject, object, action. He says, if we have perfected the first 5 paramitas, but lack non-conceptual wisdom united with bodhicitta motivation to benefit others, it will be impossible to attain enlightenment. And so then he talks about how he applies the 6th paramita to Maitreya's 4 qualities. Superior knowledge decreases all opposite sides. One possesses non-conceptual primordial wisdom. One can perfectly fulfill all wishes, and one ripens sentient beings along the 3 vehicles. And so the first quality is that superior knowledge decreases false or mistaken views, such as absolute and relative, denying absolute and relative levels of reality, disputing previous future lives, trying to disprove karma, and so on. These are examples of mistaken views or wrong knowledge. Another type of wrong view is using scientific knowledge to harm beings. If we perfect superior knowledge, we realize the true nature of mind itself. Milarepa said, there is no other superior knowledge than to realize the true nature of your mind. In other words, if you realize the true nature, then you've realized the paramita of superior knowledge. And so this is where we'll stop for today. And then next time when we get together, we'll talk about the last perfections, the last of the practices of a bodhisattva, number 30, starting with number 30 and going through number 37. Now, thank you for being patient and working through all this. And so now I'm going to go on for another 5 minutes and see if there's any questions or comments. And if anybody has a question or comment, you can unmute and we'll hear your question. Or you can write it in chat if you prefer to do it that way. Okay, let's see. Okay. All right. Okay. Okay, it's just basically saying thanks. Okay, that's great. But other people have things they'd like to comment on or questions. We wore you out. Oh my gosh.
I have a question. I have a question.
Yes.
Is the ability to help beings move forward with their practice, is that similar to transmission?
Oh,
Or is that one kind of help?
Yeah, transmission is one kind of help. I think you've got it. Transmission is one kind of help, because if I'm going to write something in chat, ripening, the whole idea of ripening, students and helping people ripen in the Dharma. There are lots of things that you can give to people, and then one of the types of things you can give is transmission. Transmission, it can be of teachings. You can transmit teachings to people. You can give like personal examples. For example, Khenpo Karthar Rinpoche, even just the way he carried himself was a teaching. So he was kind of giving transmission on all kinds of different levels. He could give like Dharma teachings in Tibetan, and then if he had a really good interpreter, the person could really understand something from his teaching. And so there's that kind of transmission. But then there's also the transmission that occurs when you sit and meditate with someone, and there's this sense of where they feel they understand meditation better because they've sat with someone who was meditating. And so, yeah, there's all kinds of different ways that you can help ripen people, because sometimes it's just, I was having a conversation with somebody the other day, and they were grappling with a personal thing. And suddenly there was like one thing that came up in the conversation, and that one thing that came up in the conversation, they said, okay, I understand what's happening now. And I understand what I need to do now. And I understand the mistake that I've made, and I see how I can take action to correct that mistake. So sometimes transmission is not like a sacred holy thing. It's just two people together in a conversation, and that some third thing comes up from their conversing and being with one another. And so, and if we look back to the beginning of the 37 actions, that one verse that says, when in reliance upon someone, your defects wane and your qualities grow like the waxing moon, to rely on such a person. You see what I'm like? So that's the function of a teacher in one's life, is to help bring us along. They have like no other thing that they want. The people who are really good teachers, they don't want anything for themselves. They want everything for the student. They want the students more than anything. They want them to understand and to feel connected to Dharma practice and to be able to do it, and to take impediments out of the way of a Dharma practitioner. That's such a good feeling when you can help somebody understand something and understand themselves to the extent that they're ready, to move. Does that help? Okay, we got a yes. Okay. Let's see. There is another question. Yeah, I like that. I'm sure I'll have questions later. Yes, you can actually write me questions in between, and then I'll make sure I answer them first thing next class. So if you have a question, you can send it to me at the address that's on the Eventbrite, and I'll get it. And here's another one. It seems that the 4-part ultimate bodhicitta meditation applies to many of these latter practices, and the answer to that is yes. So if, because as you do your practice, as you do this practice, this allows you to see and experience things differently. Thank you for the teachings. I'm with another KTC. Okay, yeah, hi, yeah, and you can join us anytime. Thank you for saying hi. Let's see. As I understand it, the best way a student can please their teachers to practice, right? Absolutely. Absolutely. Somebody asked Khenpo Karthar Rinpoche, you know, what kind of gift can I give you, Rinpoche? And Rinpoche said, if you want to be generous, that's wonderful. But the very best gift you can give to a teacher is to practice. If you can practice what the teacher is teaching you, he said they're happy, so it's, so that's great. Anybody else have a question or comment? We have time for one more. Okay, I'm not seeing one, so I think we're completed for this evening. Let's see if let's see what is, if I have, okay. Yeah, I'm going to share the screen, and I'm going to lead us in the dedication, because there's a dedication here that we can use. Let's see if I can get it. I think this is it. Yes, here we go. So we'll gather together all of the goodness from our practice today, and dedicate it to all sentient beings. By this merit, may all attain omniscience. May it defeat the enemy wrongdoing. From the stormy waves of birth, old age, sickness, and death, from the ocean of samsara, may I free all beings. The courageous Manjushri, who knows everything as it is, Samantabhadra, who also knows in the same way, and all the bodhisattvas that I may follow in their path, I completely dedicate all this virtue. Okay. Well, folks, it's been wonderful to see you, and it's good to be back. And I really appreciate you being here and bringing your sincerity to the class tonight. And next week, we'll be meeting Wednesday night, 7 p.m. to finish up the 37 practices. And then we'll talk about next steps, because we may have another book study or lesson coming up. So look forward to talking to you then.
Thank you.
It's like, okay, everybody.
Thank you, Lama Kathy. Good night, everyone. Good night.
Yeah, no, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.